Welcome to Smashing Success Stories. I am your host, Karen. I'm a speaker, trainer, and consultant. This podcast is meant to inspire people who want results without compromising who they are. This is for folks that want to stay true to themselves while living in a world that challenges our humanity. So welcome, humans, champions, legends, to Smashing Success Stories. I'm glad you're here, and I'm glad we're doing this together. Let's get started. Ooh, this is going to be a fun topic. Judgment. Main concepts that we're going to cover in today's episode. What is judgment? The contributing factors and how we can stand the solution. As with everything, anytime we discuss something on this program, we will always talk about solutions. So let's jump right in. So what exactly is judgment? We're going to look at things literally from the definition according to Merriam-Webster. Something in these 6 definitions is that every single one of those, there's a common thread, and that common thread is subjectivity. Discernment based on opinion. And yeah, of course, there are factors, but at the end of the day, it's about opinion. So when we think about judgment, remember that. It's going to be internal, there's going to be external factors. Remember that these are things based on opinion. So what are the factors that contribute toward judgment? You've got fear, you've got projection, such as insecurities and resentments, and then there's perception, internal and external. Remember, it is easier to criticize than it is to create. Think for a moment about, let's say, a video on YouTube. Somebody posits a hypothesis or is sharing insight, sharing an opinion, and then think about all of the comments that are going to happen, and then you're going to see critiques. Critiques on the internet are inevitable. But I do wonder, of all of those people that are criticizing, how many of them are actually content creators? And let's bear in mind that there is a difference between critiquing something and evaluating it and providing insight based on one's own expertise, such as holding somebody accountable, versus somebody that's just going in and spouting an opinion, conflating their opinion as a fact, and just running their mouths. So with that, consider the context, consider the topic, the subject. Like, for example, if you're looking for help with an electrical outlet, consider the context and the subject, and that is going to help ultimately determine whom you're going to speak to and get insight from. For instance, ask an electrician, ask somebody in the trade. But you see what I'm saying? We need to think about an expert, somebody who understands this particular thing. Also bear in mind that we see what is familiar to us. People also show up how we expect them to. It's called confirmation bias, which ultimately means when we are specifically looking for something, we are going to gravitate toward that thing that pretty much confirms what we are looking for. So for instance, if you're looking for a car and you've narrowed it down to, let's say, a Honda Civic, you know, anybody who's been through this knows exactly what this is like. What are you going to be seeing on the road all the time? You're going to be seeing a ton of Honda Civics. I also think a lot about people who are, oh my gosh, people who are wild in their relationships, who are constantly suspecting, oh, is this person cheating? Are they talking to another, blah, 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 whatnot? And the more they go down that rabbit hole and start actively looking for things, the more they're actually going to find, whether it is real empirical evidence of that person committing that thing. And okay, good for the person that did that fact finding, because if you're in a committed monogamous relationship, of course, dealing with cheating is something that needs to be addressed. However, if this is more along the lines of just the feeling that this person isn't loyal, the person who's seeking things are going to look at things through a lens expecting to see something that's suspicious. Checking text messages, reading through Facebook messages, so on and so forth. They're going to make up a story about their partner, and it's not going to be good. So remember, people show up how we expect them to, and when we're seeking something, we're very likely going to find hints and clues of that thing that we're seeking. On the note of perception, I am a member of the metalhead community. I love heavy metal, I love rock music, I love festivals, I love shows. I have a very eclectic musical taste, but heavy metal has always been a part of my life. Metalheads, we're a bunch of goofballs. I do find that people who go to shows are fun, they're safe to be around, they look for one another, they're definitely looking to keep each other safe. On the whole, of course, you're going to have some outliers that just ruin it, but here's this perception of people that, dress in dark colors and like loud and, almost like aggressive music, but turns out we're actually super positive people. There is a TED Talk that talks about the positivity in metal music. I'll go ahead and link it in the show notes. And this is a great example of how when people are perceived one way, it's interesting because we actually turn out to be something a little bit different. Now, there is a lot of nuance. So let's go ahead and think about those external appearances. Think about like geodes, scallops, oysters. These are things that on the outside don't necessarily tell us the beauty of the whole. Because on the inside, we know there is beauty inside. I think about my own issues with self-doubt, fears of perception, and I think about how long have I held myself back because of my own insecurities. Spoiler alert, it's been way too long. But I know I'm worth more than what I have allowed into my life, and I am ready for more. I've been blessed. I've had some amazing experiences, and thankfully, over time, I have continued to earn more. But I also know I'm nowhere near where I should be. More examples that I really like. There is an awesome quote by Theodore Roosevelt, and it comes from what is called The Man in the Arena. And instead of reading the whole quote, I'm just going to go ahead and pick some things. In brief, he talks about focusing on the person who's actively doing the work versus the critic. So the credit belongs to the man who is actually in the arena, whose face is marred by dust and sweat and blood, who strives valiantly, who errs, who comes short again and again, because there is no effort without error and shortcoming. In the end, triumph of high achievement, and if we fail while doing greatly. Some of that was paraphrased, some of it comes directly from the quote. I'll throw a link to the quote in the show notes. But think about that. When we are doing something, and if we're getting external judgment, criticism, feedback, remember that we are doing something. We are actively doing the work. And we'll get a little bit more into why it's important to listen to judgment and feedback from the correct people, from the correct perspective. But also bear in mind that when we are doing something, we are working toward a very specific objective, especially if we're pursuing a goal. Also remember, people are fickle. Opinions change. There is a wonderful show called Our Flag Means Death, and there is one of those scenes that has forever been etched in my mind. And it's where Stede and his crew is there with Blackbeard. And of course, Blackbeard is completely out of his element. And Stede is introducing him to a bunch of aristocrats. And unfortunately, Ed, Blackbeard, experienced what it was like to both be almost beloved and then to be made fun of. And we see this a lot on the internet. We see a lot in groups where that shift can happen based on popularity, based on opinion. I remember some examples from my careers, and I am the kind of person who unabashedly will ask questions because I want to master these skills. I want to obtain this knowledge, And I want to be able to resolve situations. So having as much information in my own internal database as humanly possible helps me develop the skills and have the knowledge and be secure in providing whatever work, whatever service that at the time I was providing. I mean, it's the same in doing what I'm doing right now. It's not going to be perfect, but the more information I have, the better off I'm going to be. So of course I'm going to ask questions. And it's interesting because I remember there was one specific training that I was sitting in, and my team and I were delegated to literally do the work of another team. And I had asked a lot of questions because it was not my job. So of course I want to learn more about this thing that I have been delegated to do. So at one point, the trainer had asked us, okay, so everybody knows how this exact process happens, right? And I see my teammates nodding their heads, and I'm thinking to myself, I'm the fucking trainer, and I don't know this process. So I look around and I see like the nods and stuff, and I'm like, I know for sure that they don't know that process. And this is something I also learned after the training, because everybody came to me and they're like, okay, so what is that thing? So I asked in the training, okay, can you walk us through it? And the trainer walked us through it. And then when we actually embarked on the project, my team would come to me and they're like, okay, so what are we doing? And I was like, y'all, everybody nodded their heads in that training. Why didn't anybody say something? And it's because people are fickle, we're insecure, we don't want to seem as if we don't know something, but during a training is the exact right time to be asking questions when they're in the context of the training that we are actively in, and two, when it serves a very specific, deliberate purpose. I also love the song Juicy by Biggie. At the beginning of the song, he prefaces it with, this song is dedicated to the teachers who told him he wouldn't mount to shit. And also think about what motivates us, what drives us. He talked about how he's just trying to feed his daughter, and he had a vision for himself and where he wanted to be and what he wanted to do. He talked about where he's from. There were only two ways to be successful. You're either going to be slinging crack rock or you got to have a wicked jump shot. Thankfully, it turned out there were other options as well. Two main takeaways from this. Hope is great. Biggie had a vision for himself. He wanted to take care of his mother, who was struggling with breast cancer. He wanted to take care of his daughter. He had a lot to live for, to strive for. He wanted to take care of his crew. I love there is a quote where he's talking about how some days were the worst days, and now they're drinking champagne because they're thirsty. Look, when it comes to rap, Biggie really is like the paragon of rap. Check out his stuff. It's incredible. But two things. Hope is great, and spite is powerful. On the topic of music, I also think about Joshua Bell. When an experiment was done in 2007, Joshua was put in a subway station and doing one of those kind of street performances. So there's Joshua Bell playing in a subway on a multi-million-dollar violin, and he's getting some spare change tossed into his violin case. Most people are just going about their day. They're just doing their thing. Think about the environment and the context. A subway station, people are just going about their day. But one person had recognized him. The evening before that experiment, Joshua was playing in a sold-out concert hall, and the tickets were expensive. So this one person out of hundreds, if not thousands, that had passed him by actually recognized him. And it's interesting because I also wonder how many people might have recognized him if the environment was different. It's a good example of judgment, context, and the environment. Another wonderful example, one of my favorite humans who has ever graced this earth, truly, somebody who I believe was a goddess among us, Eartha Kitt. There's a wonderful interview with her, and I'll go ahead and I'll link it in the show notes, where a reporter asked her about compromising to be with somebody. And in the video that I'm going to link, y'all, the way that her face shifts at 37 seconds, my life, this woman just truly mind-blowingly incredible. The way and this isn't an act or anything like that. This is a woman who is authentically and genuinely reacting to an absolutely ludicrous question. Her face shifts. She throws her head back, and the way this woman laughs is just incredible. She talks about compromise, and it's something that she is absolutely not willing to yield on, and she shouldn't. The woman is a goddess. She says a relationship has to be earned, not compromised. Why would she lower her standards or her expectations? For what? Bro, she is good. She also says, I fall in love with myself, and I want someone to share me with me. I won't get too far into it, but I wholeheartedly believe that when we get into relationships, we should be coming it as whole people, and we are sharing our lives with our partners. I am a whole person. My partner is a whole person, and we have this thing that we do together. I have my own stuff. She has her own stuff, and we have our thing. Another phenomenally talented, brilliant woman that comes to mind is Tracee Ellis Ross. And there is a lot of information out there. I'm going to link several articles. I've got 3 here that I'll go ahead and put in the show notes. And she is consciously making a choice to date with intention. And like Eartha, she's not willing to settle. Even though, and this is something Tracee has been vocal about, even though at times she kind of mourns not being in a relationship, not having a family. And I give her so much respect and credit for that, because not only is there a societal expectation for women to be part of like this family dynamic. However, what I really like about this is it's actually something that Oprah had said to her, to Tracee Ellis Ross. Oprah told her that she is the poster child for singledom. And Tracee said, I don't want to be that. Tracee instead prefers to reframe the conversation as someone who is living on their own terms, and that these traditional things don't necessarily define who she is. She says she wants to be the poster child for being an inhabitant in her own skin, for living in your own skin. That is so powerful. There's also an incredible video that Stanzi Potenza released very recently about the trial of Chappell Roan. And 2 huge takeaways that I absolutely love from Stanzi's video is it's easier for people to criticize a particular person and to kind of follow the masses when it comes to this thing that happened, versus actually using the brain power to consider, evaluate, and criticize the larger issues that have contributed toward the problems that caused such a mass attack on this one specific woman. And we know what the larger issues are. Chappell Roan is a woman. She's a queer woman. So naturally, it's easier for people to criticize that one specific person instead of understanding that, yeah, misogyny, patriarchy, this whole bullshit structure is flawed. This is Stanzi's direct quote. They said, "Your inability to acknowledge the darker parts of yourself make you a worse person." That's shadow work. And when we are so busy projecting, judging, criticizing, and not actually taking care of ourselves, that shit festers and makes it worse. And we are projecting our trauma, our insecurities, all of our shit onto other people because we're not looking in the mirror and taking care of ourselves. Let's focus on more examples. I recently met with a small business development center in my area, and the representative that I met with was super condescending. And I had talked about a project I'm working on, my action plan, and asking for help on certain elements that I was missing. So for instance, how can I best leverage things like search engine optimization for organizations to find me, but also how can I refine my search to specifically seek organizations that are looking for this one thing? So I know of several programs that I can pay for to do that, but I mean, I'm working with the Small Business Development Center. It is a public entity. So I want to leverage that public insight as much as possible because I'm paying for it with my tax dollars. So yeah, I want to access that information. I want to optimize my time and my efforts. I'm not looking to make any cold calls. I do not want to do that working any job, which I don't ever plan on doing ever again. I'm never working for, quote, a job. But two, as my own company, I don't want to be doing cold calls and networking and outreach and things like that. That's different. I'm talking just straight up cold calling. I'm over it. I don't want to do it. So when I met with this representative, I asked her, so how can I kind of fill these gaps? There were small gaps. And the way this person looked at me with disgust and was super condescending. And that's when I realized it's not me. It's not my business. I'm talking to somebody who doesn't know how to resolve this situation. It's pretty amazing how hearing bad advice lights a fire under our ass and fuels determination. I love great examples. I love success stories. That's the heart of this podcast. Smashing success stories. Talking about the good things. But for me, sometimes looking at bad examples and getting bad advice makes me really look inside and be like, you know what? I'm going to do better than that advice, than that feedback, than that criticism that was thrown my way. Support is awesome, but when it's scarce, rage will suffice. So with that, let's talk about the solution. So one of my mentors has an absolute freaking bar that she dropped in one of the groups that I'm in. It's a women's group. I live and breathe by this every day. She said, show up big. Think about that. Show up big. And it's not about putting on a facade. It's not about a persona. This is not about that fake it till you make it bullshit. This is absolutely not about that. That is something that I do not condone. That's based on a false premise. Do not fake anything. You will build something on an unstable foundation and it will fucking collapse. Don't fake it. Show up big means being authentic, being real, and claiming something in our hearts and our minds. We want it, it is ours, and we will both make our way toward it and let it gravitate toward us. There's something to be said about claiming something in our minds. And again, it creates this confirmation bias, both how we see things and how we pursue them, and how we find that they naturally gravitate toward us. There's a great book called Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. I'll go ahead and drop some resources. Take the advice with a grain of salt because you're going to be seeing a lot of things about business and capitalists and people who definitely grift off of the workers. However, a lot of the concepts are phenomenal, especially when it comes to thinking and creating this mindset that lets reality gravitate the things toward us. There's a great example about a gentleman whose child was born without ears. And despite what the doctors had told this gentleman, he truly believed that his child would be able to hear. So they found I think one of the coolest things is that the child put his jaw down on a piano and mandible bone conduction. He was actually able to hear things. I use bone conducting headphones, especially when I'm in the gym or doing stuff around the house. So that way I'm still able to hear things, but also I can listen to my podcasts and jam out and things like that. Creative, innovative solutions. Because for that particular doctor, his skills, his knowledge were limited. So people got creative. And these are the things that inspire me. These are the things that make me realize that there is always a market, there's always a need, and anytime I hear some bullshit about, oh, it can't be done, it's very likely that when we get creative and we think in moonshot ways, we can actually make things happen to ourselves, and that is how posterity happens. Pretty wild, right? When we are real, when we know who we are, the outside opinions from others don't linger for too long. And of course, people who are real, of course we are going to experience imposter syndrome. Only frauds don't experience imposter syndrome. Imposter syndrome is real for people, especially who are experts. There's a beautiful example that I can think of, and it is that piece in The Velveteen Rabbit from The Skin Horse. And I'll drop the entire quote in the show notes, but in brief, there is an exchange between Rabbit and the Skin Horse. Rabbit asks, "So what is real?" And the Skin Horse replies, "Real isn't how you are made. It's a thing that happens to you. When a child loves you for a long, long time, not just to play with, but really loves you, then you become real." "Does it hurt?" asked the Rabbit. "Sometimes," said the Skin Horse, for he was always truthful. "When you're real, you don't mind being hurt." And then later in this quote, the Skin Horse talks about, but these things don't matter. He's talking about being worn out. "Because once you're real, you can't be ugly, except to people who don't understand." "I suppose you are real?" asked the Rabbit. And then he wished he had not said it, for he thought the Skin Horse might be sensitive. But the Skin Horse only smiled. "The boy's uncle made me real," he said. "That was a great many years ago. But once you're real, you can't become unreal again. It lasts for always." Y'all, be real. Be real. This is something that I don't necessarily know can be taught. I think those of us that want it, again, confirmation bias. Here is your confirmation if you have this bias. If you're looking to live wholeheartedly, if you're looking to live real, if you're looking to live as your authentic self and not be as pressed about the external opinions of others, and if you're looking to move forward with that fear, with that doubt internally. I wish I could say conquer it. Conquering it is a ongoing, daily, moment-to-moment type thing. It's a habit. It's something that we live with because when you're real, doubt happens. We're going to have some insecurities, but that is part of being real. Brene Brown's TED Talk about vulnerability, she has two. The first one was the most prominent one. And personally, it's one of my favorites. It's one of those TED Talks that completely changed my life. At the root of learning to live with vulnerability, people who are authentic embrace vulnerability. Not that we're walking into it or putting ourselves in situations where we are vulnerable, but we understand that vulnerability is inevitable and we know how to navigate through it because we have resilience. And it's not tough guy shit. It's earned. We can't control how others see us, but we can control how we feel about ourselves. Of course, external factors have an influence. There's nature, there's nurture, and the more things happen to us, the more we receive those things, the more it creates this idea of how we're attracted to the familiar, because in our brains it's safe. If you're not comfortable with what you have, if we don't like what is in our lives, we can understand that what has happened to us is not our business. What are we going to do with it? Because that's the thing that we are in control of. Resilience, habits, and actions empower us to push forward and empower us to care less about the shitty opinions that others project toward us. I understand this whole notion of don't judge until you've walked in somebody's shoes, or understand that everybody's facing their own struggles. Quite frankly, I understand that. But I'm going to do my best to be a decent, authentic, kind person, ideally without causing damage. I wonder if a lot of people are thinking it from that same perspective. Most of us are selfish, and we're not thinking about how our actions are going to affect other people. And if you do think about how your actions affect other people, thank you. Keep that up. Please keep it up. We need more people like you. I was part of a project where I was put into competition with another creator. And it seemed super antithetical to me because it seemed with our combined expertise, because we were coaching two groups of people who were working toward the same goal. And instead of competing, to me, it made more sense for us to collaborate and coordinate as a team to help all of these people. I understand that some people are competitive and that they're motivated when it comes to competition. But I also understand that for so many of us, we don't care about competition. We just want to exist. Goals are not mutually exclusive with competition. Why has it got to be a competition? Are we doing our part? Are we productive members of society? Are we doing good deeds? Are we not causing harm? Are we not hoarding resources? Great. Why do I need to compete with anybody? If you mean it, you'll make it. When we have a goal, a vision for ourselves, when we're in the pursuit of what we want, we see things that will guide us toward that goal. Again, confirmation bias. And when it comes to yourself, look, be your own biggest supporter, your loudest fan, your wildest stan, because in the end, we are the one true consistent person that will always be with us. The opinion that matters the most is your own. Of course, be receptive to feedback, but also understand the context and the environment. With that, I'm going to link a video. It is feedback that Hayao Miyazaki, founder of Studio Ghibli, shared his insight on artificial intelligence. I really hope you've seen this video. If not, I'm going to link it on the show notes. And it's where he is witnessing these programs showing him an emulation of something that generative artificial intelligence had created. And you could see the spirits of the people in the room breaking when he shared his insight. He has this line where he says, "I feel like we are nearing the end of times. Humans are losing faith in ourselves." Because what he was witnessing was not art. The work that he has produced is incredibly humane with a profound, deep, and powerful message. Not to mention the illustration, which is hand-drawn, is absolutely beautiful. So to have people come in and be like, I've created this tool to replace what humans can do. These tools don't replace what humans can do. And plus what he was viewing, the zombie simulation, it was also incredibly ableist, in which he did call out as well. That's a great example of context, speaker, and the value of their insight. Yeah, it's hard to hear constructive feedback, but in that situation, it needed to be called out. So when these people reflect back on what they did, I would think that they instead thought we should get actual artists to do this and not appropriate the work of human beings. Because at the end, it's humans that are actively creating. Generative artificial intelligence isn't fucking creative anything. It's looking at a subset of data and it is emulating something that already exists. We'll touch on this much later on. This is a hot topic, and I've got some takes. So again, focusing on the solution, and this is something that we can do to help combat our internal criticism, which also will help when it comes to receiving that external criticism. We're going to do a personal inventory, and I'll include a worksheet in the show notes, and this is something that I encourage working on with a mentor, working on with a coach, or thinking about a friend who has the best intentions when it comes to how they're involved in your life. Think about somebody who is honest, that you trust, that is kind, but is also willing to hold you accountable. I have somebody that immediately comes to mind for myself. She is a hard ass, but she does have her heart in such a good place. And she is kind, but her type of honesty cuts right through the crap. She's not mean. She is honest without being an asshole, but she speaks to me with the kind of directness that I really appreciate. I take things literally, and she knows exactly how to get through to me. Or I should say, I like her conversation style because it gets through to me. Whereas I have another friend, and I want to be very clear about something. This is something we've touched on in a previous episode. We can't expect everybody to be everything to us. So with that, I have another friend who, she's a very cool person, but she is super competitive to the point where it's very condescending and toxic. So I have gone to her in specific situations, and she has had my back and has supported me because she is one of those friends that is there to support me when things are rough, but I know not to go to her when things are great because again, she's super competitive and highly insecure, but you know what I'm saying? She's one of my homegirls, and I know she's going to be one of those ride or dies if things get really bad. But I also know not to share all of my wins with her, because she's going to be one of those people that diminishes it. And the advice we give is the advice that we need to hear the most. So this is a topic that I'm sharing about because for me, it is always going to be a work in progress. I hope this episode was helpful for you. Again, definitely take a look at the show notes. I'll go ahead and have a post on smashingsuccessstories.com. I'll link it in the show notes as well, where I'll have lots of resources, including some actionable items that, if you'd like, you can utilize and be more actively involved in this project. Thanks for being here. New episodes go live every Monday and Thursday. Subscribe, share, and follow Smashing Success Stories on Instagram and YouTube. Bonus content and exclusives are available to patrons. Check out patreon.com/Smashing Success Stories for membership tiers and details. And always remember, whoever you are, wherever you are, just know that you are loved and that you are important. We are in this together. Till next time.